West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. This hour, how have Democrat states like California gotten around the bans on Medicaid spending on illegal immigrants? How they launder this money is fascinating, and the House Budget Committee was able to expose this. It's going to get a little complicated, but the blue states have basically put together a laundering scheme that takes Medicaid funding, fills the state coffers, they then backfill funding to illegal immigrants, and this is part of the big debate over the government shutdown. It's what's called the California loophole. We'll talk about that because, yes, tax dollars are being spent on illegal immigrants getting health care. Now it's time for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good Thursday morning. 52 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 82 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story.
You already see, I think, the Democrats cracking a little bit because they realize it's such a preposterous position to say, we're going to shut down TSA, we're going to not pay our troops because you guys won't give us benefits for illegal aliens. It's crazy, and I don't think it's a tenable political situation for them to be in.
Yep. VP JD with this idiotic shutdown. It continues. We enter day 2 with no end in sight. They held procedural votes on 2 competing funding measures, but both failed. The head of the Office of Management and Budget says the shutdown could lead to the mass firing of federal workers in a day or two. Fox News this morning, Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen stepped in it.
I haven't heard anybody in my party saying that illegal immigrants should get access to the health insurance marketplace.
I'm so glad you said that. Actually, I have some tape of your Democratic Party members saying this on the debate stage. So they've all said it. Let's play the clip.
A lot of you have been talking tonight about these government health care plans that you proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
And all 10 raised their hands in 2019.
Senator, that's literally every member of your party, from moderate to more progressive, that have said that in the past.
Jeanne Shaheen. Jeanne Shaheen. Kind of reminded me of Jean the Dancing Machine from the old Gong Show. Remember that? And then let's get a little gong from AOC.
And I saw some Republican members of Congress saying, oh, well, if we have this shutdown, it's because of AOC. Well, if that's the case, my office is open and you are free to walk in and negotiate with me directly. Because what I'm not going to do is tolerate 4 million uninsured Americans because Donald Trump decided one day that he wants to just make sure that kids are dying because they don't have access to insurance.
Gong. All right. Rick Scott from Florida.
What are the Democrats doing? This is a clean resolution. All we're doing is keeping the funding. Actually, the funding is too high. It's still the Biden funding. But I don't want to shut down government, so I support it. But the Democrats, they want a shutdown for whatever reason. How is this good for the country?
No doubt.
Nobody wins with a shutdown.
Amen. Wall Street is opening with stocks higher. The major averages finished higher on Wednesday in hopes that the stalemate between the lawmakers won't last long. The shutdown isn't expected to impact Colorado in the short term, but state-run programs could feel effects if it goes beyond a couple of weeks. Colorado is heavily reliant on federal funding. The state is expecting around $14 billion in this year's budget. Over 41,000 people in Colorado are federally employed. 2 people are reported dead after a stabbing attack outside of a synagogue in Manchester, England. The incident happened as Jews are marking the Yom Kippur holiday today, which is considered the holiest day of the year in Judaism. The suspect was reportedly seen driving a vehicle toward a crowd before going on the attack. A Parker man is facing charges after bomb and death threats were made against a local church. Douglas County DA George Brockler.
You can imagine, given what's taken place in current events, to have the allegations that there are bombs at a place of worship, that has to be treated seriously.
27-year-old Patrick Michael Sparks is accused of targeting Crossroads Community Church, where about 2,000 people worship each weekend. Court records show Sparks, a former attendee, is charged with making the threats through emails and through comments on a church service live stream, along with stalking and harassment. Members of the LDS Church are fundraising for the family of the man who killed 4 Michigan churchgoers. A science fiction and fantasy author who is also an LDS member launched an effort which has collected more than $225,000. Thomas Jacob Sanford is accused of killing at least 4 people in Sunday's attack and injuring 8 others before he was killed by officers outside of the scene. The proceeds from the fundraiser will go to Sanford's widow and his son, who has a rare genetic disorder that requires costly health care.
That right there is a perfect example of who Mormons are.
Bingo. We were talking about 2 days ago, and there it is right there. That is who they are.
They make the best neighbors.
Yep.
They're super nice people. They're not even involved in politics. It was one of, as the guy who was the coalitions director for Mitt Romney, I was going, why won't the Mormons get out there and get their own guy elected? They didn't. They're just not involved in the political space, and this was a terrible tragedy that happened to them. And the fact that they fundraised money to give to the widow of the guy that killed people that came into their church, it just gives you an insight into the kindness and compassion that these people have.
Does not surprise me at all. You are correct. NFL back tonight. Niners and Rams. Both teams are 3-1, and Bill Schmidt says that'll do it for him as the general manager of the Rockies. Once again, they finished 43-119. The Gong Show was wild. Gene, the dancing machine.
Forecast for the Denver metro area calls
for filmed where coke was mandatory. You knew there were piles of cocaine and other drugs on craft services table. There's probably like one little thing of like little Jello, things, and everything else was just cocaine, Quaaludes. Everybody on that show was high. Yeah, it was great.
That show was wild.
Oh, it was.
I mean, I remember seeing it as a kid going, what is going on here? And my mom would just roll her eyes like, okay, let's turn that off. But Gene, the dancing machine would come out there, and they just lost
Oh, God, yeah. And the unknown comic and everybody else. There were so many things. It's, oh, God. And the thing is, you can't bring that back because it was so unhinged. You couldn't pull it off today. There's no way, because it is the unhinged nature of everybody involved in that game show that made it so much fun to watch. You're like, yeah, it's like, I think one of these people is super drunk and the other person's high as heck.
They just did not care.
Oh, yeah. Not at all. Not at all.
All righty.
You want to have some other fun? Go back and watch some early versions of The Electric Company, my friend.
Oh God,
They're on drugs,
absolutely,
too.
yes.
They are
I you know what? I thought that when I was a kid, and I didn't even know what drugs were.
I know.
I'm like,
people are
what is
weird.
this all? Why am I watching this?
Still a great show.
Should this be legal?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
All right, Jeff and Billy, continue. In the dancing machine. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for late summer rather than early fall-like weather conditions today into Friday, as we're going to be looking at temperatures a good 10 to 12 degrees above average, mid and upper 80s for highs. Sunny, dry conditions, mid-50s tonight, 70 Saturday, 60 Sunday, weekend showers. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, one of the hottest aspects of the debate about the government being shut down is whether or not funding for Medicaid is going to illegal immigrants. We had a discussion on that yesterday. We got a call on that. Jeff, it's illegal. It's illegal for funding to go to Medicaid. Yes, you're absolutely right. We cannot go and do a direct check from Medicaid to an illegal immigrant in order to get Medicaid services. Oh, but there's a big way the government got around it. It's called the California loophole. All right, so try to stay with me here because it is very complicated. But yes, 100% tax dollars are going to illegal immigrants via Medicaid. So here's how it happens, okay? It's a scheme. California dramatically raises taxes on Medicaid insurers. So think of the companies that provide Medicaid insurance, okay? Raises the taxes on them. This generated $16.7 billion in revenue for the California General Fund, okay? So they raise taxes on these insurers. They get $16.7 billion that came in. The state of California put that in a general fund. California is required to pay the Medicaid providers the same amount as the tax is raised. Okay, so the insurers get taxed. That generates $16.7 billion. California is then required to pay the Medicaid providers the same amount as the tax raised. The federal government matches the payments California made to Medicaid. So California invoices the federal government for $16.7 billion. The federal government then pays a 60% match, and California receives $9.5 billion. California then spends $5.6 billion on expanded state programs and then spent $3.9 billion to put illegal immigrants on Medicaid. What does this mean? Okay. Bottom line, California couldn't spend direct Medicaid dollars from the federal government on illegal immigrants. So they came up with a scheme by which they raised taxes on the Medicaid insurers, then paid out the same amount to Medicaid providers, billed the federal government. The federal government paid for that. They were then able to use the tax dollars they got from the Medicaid insurers to put together a state-based program that provided Medicaid services to illegal immigrants. It's called the California loophole. The White House is saying that this loophole was resulting in $200 billion on health care for illegal immigrants. And it wasn't just California. Other states like Massachusetts, Michigan, and New York were doing the same thing. It was a scheme. It was a money laundering scheme. And it was addressed by the big, beautiful bill. Found this loophole, fixed it. Democrats are arguing that they want this loophole reopened, saying, no, this doesn't provide direct funding for Medicaid for illegal immigrants. But as I just explained to you, it becomes a money laundering scheme in order for those states to provide those services on the back of federal taxpayers. I'm sorry, my brain hurts even trying to explain that. But that's basically how it worked. Bill, any response to that?
Yeah, the question is that if California raises the taxes on the insurance companies, because the Medicare funds for insurance comes from both state and feds, so I'm not certain that it technically derives solely from the feds as far as federal money being put directly into the service for illegals. I can see why, once we put it into a giant pot of money, how then, because the dollars intermix, that there are questions about it.
Yep.
But then again, this is the same sort of argument that I hear in favor of eliminating the Department of Education, that there should be some sort of a large block grant and then allow the states to disperse that money the way in which they see fit. And what I'm seeing and this is the same kind of idea that we had for us when Roe versus Wade was overturned, that each one of these states was then going to be able to chart their own path. So if California decides to raise insurance rates on insurance providers and they turn around and use that money in part for expanded care, it seems to be their choice and their purview. It seems to be just like those larger block grants, that some states are going to handle it one way and other states are going to handle it another way. I know there are some states that do cover insurance for illegals, but that's purely out of state funds. There are some states that do that, and some states have some real constraints on how much they can spend and who qualifies and who doesn't. Things like student visas and tourist visas don't qualify. H-1B visas, some don't qualify in some areas. So it seems to be that's kind of what we wanted, was each state would be allowed to make their choices and then suffer the success or negative impacts of what they're choosing.
Yeah, so a few things with that argument. Number one, it's not illegal with regards to block grants to other states the way California is illegally providing health care for illegal immigrants by jacking up insurance rates. They figured out the scheme. They can jack up the insurance rates there, bring in the money that comes from the federal government at a match of 60%, build their own coffers, then use that to provide money for illegal immigrants. And what you have there in that mix is a specific ban on Medicaid dollars going to illegal immigrants. You don't have that with the education issue that you put out there. There's no violation of any other law where the state has figured out a way to get around the law by scamming the federal government, bringing in more money, and then creating giant coffers by which they can do something that's banned from law in the first place.
What I was using that example for was this argument about block grants. I'm just using it as an example that we argued that we won't have all these rules and regulations if we just give the states the block grant for education funding, and we seem to think that we would then ignore some of the federal laws and some other things. That was the argument, that if we would just give them a pile of money, the states can choose to do with it what they want. And that's why I'm using that example, because in this case, people are mad that a large sum of money is being distributed in a way they disagree with and think is wrong. However, when they raise the tax money on the state insurers, that money does become state money, not necessarily Fed money at that point. And so the idea that if it would make people feel better that they would have two different bank accounts and then only the money for the illegals would come out of the bank account that has the state money. They still have enough money there to provide that. So it still would happen.
But they're able to build the state
mad.
bank account because they're scamming the federal taxpayer.
No, they're just spending money in different ways because there's a match.
No. This is there's jacked up higher tax, knowing that they can do that to exploit more money from the federal government. This isn't just a lump sum given to other people. What the state of California figured out is that we can drive up the taxes. In doing that, we can now pull more money from the federal government. That builds our own coffers. It's a complete scam. If this was done with your bank or anybody else, you'd go, you are scamming me, and you're using the money improperly in order to drive another end that you're specifically banned from law for doing.
So I understand that the mixing of the dollars makes it difficult, but the state can raise their taxes on those insurance providers for any reason that they want, per se. And if they are doing it, if they are doing it to cover other medical issues, that we wouldn't have as much of an idea about the mixing of the federal dollars. That's it. The idea is they raise taxes on their own insurers, and then they use that money to provide medical coverage. Now, we can disagree about that, but again, I understand that there is some sort of a loophole here, but it's not necessarily, for me, the large drain that we see elsewhere, nor...
It's $200 billion.
I disagree. But for what? $200 billion? I thought you said it was $6 billion that they got, or 60% of
that particular state. But when you look at this loophole across the country, it's $200 billion.
But you outlined it in California. Who else is doing it then?
A number of states, New York, Washington, or New York, Michigan, Massachusetts, and others. But the White House saying in their memo, $200 billion.
Yeah, again, I want to see the numbers behind that because they're making this argument, and I'm not certain that number is necessarily accurate, especially if we're focused on, I've seen California and New York do it. I'm not as familiar with either Massachusetts or Michigan, but the other states that provide coverage do it through state funding. And so there is a way and a mechanism for that to be provided as well. And if you just have two different pots of money, then if the federal money is being diverted, again, once you put it into one bank account, how do you decide? There's no way that you can mix it up. So if it would make you feel better that we would just designate two bank accounts, then okay.
I think you're missing what is happening here. What is happening is that with the rising of these taxes, and I'll explain it again, okay? You end up triggering a certain amount that comes from the federal government in a matched program. They know by driving up these taxes, they're also going to drive up the match payments that come from the federal government. And they're doing that specifically to build a fund for illegal immigrants. It's because Medicaid is matched at the federal government. They know it. They're driving up the taxes to drive up the amount of money that's paid from the federal government. So it's not just two pots. It's the fact that they're exploiting the system to get more of your taxpayer dollars. By the way, this increases premium costs as well. They're exploiting the system to get money in specifically to fund Medicaid for illegal immigrants when that's illegal, and they're running around saying, we don't want to provide health care for illegal immigrants. They're lying. They're lying, and they're exploiting the system in order to do so.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily as nefarious or exploitative that you outline as far as the direct reason is so that we can create this scheme in order to cover the illegals. I don't think they're necessarily that clever. That absolutely can be a byproduct of what they are doing. But if you're able to increase these taxes in order to increase federal funding, yeah, that seems to be you could do that across the board for a variety of different reasons. Okay.
Do you want your tax dollars going to pay for the health care of illegal immigrants?
I don't, because they already are going to, and here's the reason why. And there are several layers to that. First is I'm never going to refuse anybody emergency care. So my tax dollars are already going to take care of them. Now, since I have already decided that I'm not going to refuse anybody emergency care, and that's just my morals and ethics. I'm not going to turn you away for whatever reason at that emergency room door. I'm not wired that way. Someone else in the Jeff and Bill show that can be listening can be wired differently. That's on you. We can have that discussion. I'm not going to. Now, if I have come to the conclusion that I am not going to refuse emergency services to people, the next question is, would I spend less on those emergency services if I provided preventative care? Chances are yes. I would spend less total if I provided preventative care. Now, that's why I am persuaded to provide some basic preventative care in that monitor, because I've already said I'm going to pay the cost. Now I'm just trying to find the best way and the most efficient way to make sure that the cost is lower. That's it. But that's how I'm wired morally, because I'm not going to refuse you medical care. That's it.
Okay. And when this happens and Denver has to lay off 169 employees and not fill 665 open positions, that's okay.
We can't raise taxes?
Okay. Well, no, you absolutely can. In this situation.
Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
We can. And that's my solution. And I've been very, very focused on this about, yes, we can raise taxes. And my target is the top half of 0.5%. They have been the economic winners over the previous 2 decades of our economy. They have amassed more wealth than we've seen in America since practically the Gilded Age. There's the wiggle room. To go back to the earlier conversation, there is tax money available. That's where I go, and I am unapologetic about it.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
there
how
you
I
go.
fix it.
I mean, the idea that somebody that shouldn't be here legally in the first place, we're going to pay for their health care by robbing somebody who should be here, is here, legally, built a company, and has been successful. You, sir, you are the ones that we are going to take your money and hand it to somebody that's going to get health care that should never be here in the first place. That's just wild.
I'm not robbing them anything. But
Oh,
that's okay.
really? Really?
No, not at all. No. It's
You,
not,
you
not
don't.
robbery.
You don't really.
No, I don't view it that way. I know you do, but I don't view it that way. I view the IRS and taxes more as a community thing. I mean, that it's a weird bromide, but I view it as the idea of the IRS, that the idea of where our taxes go are supporting our communities, and that everybody has a different share, and that's because we're all in different areas. That's fine, and that's okay. I'm a firm believer in graduated taxes, and I think that's okay. And I think that the long arm of history has borne out that works out better more times than it doesn't, and I'm okay with that. And I understand it's difficult, and I understand there are people in the upper end, and that squeezes, okay? I understand that. Yeah. Yep. I'm fine with that, and I'm happy to defend it. Yes.
Do you think your taxes should go up to provide health care for illegal immigrants?
What percentage? What are you talking about?
I don't know. Anything.
Yeah,
penny, $1, $100. Where would
Yeah.
you draw the line?
I don't know. I'd have to look at percentages as far as what
I
we're
don't
looking
think there
at.
should be. I don't think your taxes should go up at all to provide health care for people who shouldn't be in this country legally.
How do we pay for the health care? Do we not give them health care?
Yeah, no, you can leave.
No, wait, hang on. Do we not give them health care? They
Sure.
show up at the emergency room. Do we turn them away?
I would allow for nonprofit, faith-based hospitals, if they want to do that, if they want to get people together to freely give up their money to provide health care for illegal immigrants, I'm okay with it. But I don't believe it's right for the government at the point of a gun to go take money from people who've earned their money and hand it to the healthcare services of people who shouldn't be in this country legally.
So if you're in a community that doesn't have one of those hospitals, you're okay with not providing the health care?
Yeah. Why not?
Interesting. Okay. I am wired differently morally and ethically than that.
But I mean, if you wander into a desert, right, and you get hurt, do you place any type of responsibility on the person that wandered into a desert and got hurt?
The question is, we're not talking about someone that is an illegal wandering into a desert. They're in a community where health care is available, and you want to say no, even though it could be provided. Okay, that's fair. That's your choice.
With tax dollars, yeah. If you want, you want as a nonprofit or a faith-based entity to provide that, sure. But why don't you put it on any? Why don't you put any responsibility on the person that shouldn't be in this country in the first place?
No, I understand that as well.
But if I wander into China and I'm not supposed to be there and I get hurt, who am I to demand that the Chinese people take care of me?
It's not a matter of you demanding the Chinese
people.
Sure,
they're demanding.
No, hang on. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not facing a demand from anybody. You're viewing it as a demand. For me, morally and ethically, I am called to provide. That's how I view the message that I've been given.
So let's go back to what that dollar amount's going to be. How much are you willing to pay? And how much should somebody else that doesn't want to pay be forced to pay?
I don't have that number. We can talk about percentages and talk about where that sits over the course of it. But I am okay paying for things that I don't always derive a direct benefit from because of the society that I live in and the community that I want to be in. And I understand that type of a shared risk. And I am not happy paying the highest possible price point for individuals who I'm okay getting health care to, even though they're illegal in the country. I want to find a way to control and restrain those costs. But saying, I'm sorry that you're injured, you're sick, you have this illness, you just broke a leg, I can't do anything for you. Good luck. Here's a lollipop. I'm not wired that way ethically and morally.
Bill, that's fine. If you want to give to a church that wants to provide that service, I don't have a problem with that.
And I don't want to live in a community that views the rest of the world that way. I don't. I think it's an incredibly harsh and nihilistic view on the world.
If you want to give that, I don't have any problem with it. If you want to freely give all of your money to the health care services of illegal immigrants, I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is, what right do we have to force somebody else to do that? Especially if the person shouldn't be here in the first place. All right, join the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. I guarantee you that this conversation is not happening on any other radio station in Denver.
Not this way.
Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Guys, let's talk advanced hair restoration. If your hair's thinning, your crown's disappearing, maybe hair loss has you feeling your identity's lost altogether. Well, I got good news for you. It's an incredible yet simple one-day treatment that starts growing your own natural hair the very next day, and it's guaranteed to grow for life. It's the Advanced FUE from Advanced Hair. We've all seen the pills and lotions that come with monthly subscriptions. They help retain what you have, but what if what you want is your own natural hair permanently in specific areas? From Advanced Hair's state-of-the-art facilities to world-class Dr. Tanya Pauls, it's not maybe your hair will regrow. It's guaranteed that your new hair will grow. You decide how much, how thick, and where. It's why Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver. For your free consultation, $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Call 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. Advancedhair.com. We'll continue phone calls and text messages. So hot on this one. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Fox News reporting that the White House saying Democrats' plan would result in $200 billion being spent on health care for illegal immigrants. How do they do it? Well, it's not directly spent. It's this, what's described as the California loophole, where federal money ends up paying for Medicaid for illegal immigrants by essentially laundering the money, jacking up Medicaid insurance rates, claiming 60% from the federal government that then allows for additional state tax dollars to go towards illegal immigrants. Whew. What do you think of all this? Obviously, Bill and I have different opinions on the use of spending illegal or using tax dollars on illegal immigrants. Want to hear from you. Let's go to Jim in Denver. Good morning, Jim. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Listen, the taxes, they're necessary just so that we can give people tax cuts. The taxes that the so-called working class used to pay, they're a non-issue in this nation. In fact, taxes are a total non-issue in this nation because the people that are able to get the tax reductions are the ones that are insisting on bringing the illegal aliens into this nation. We used to have a big tax base, the middle class, but they unionized and they had retirements and health care. Now health care's gone. Now retirements are gone. And we're arguing about whether we give additional tax cuts to the people that insist on bringing more illegals in here and then having the workers starve in the streets. It's goofy. It doesn't make sense.
Jim, I mean, I understand the frustration because it does seem like the system's going on. When you look at the amount of fees we're all paying in the state of Colorado, too, it feels like somebody's getting rich. It ain't us.
Let's just make every toll road or every road and every intersection with a stoplight in it a toll. If the light turns green, then you got to pay a toll. I mean, that would be free markets, wouldn't it? We don't want that. We want to have people that can move easily and can actually have businesses and prosper and have families to carry on their family name. That's all in jeopardy because we print money for people that don't need it. And then that money, I got to tell you something, we're about to have our first trillionaire here. It's a race to see who can have the first trillionaire, us or China or whomever else is in this race. And these trillionaires take a lot of money out of circulation. If the money doesn't circulate, the government steps in and prints more. And then they give it to people first. They get to swipe the cream off the top before the money circulates. By the time the money gets down to your grandkids, that money doesn't have the same purchasing power as it did when it was created and handed out to the person in the government or the person with the new factory that they're going to build.
Jim,
we want
great.
people starving in the streets. We hate labor. We hate expensive labor. We hate cheap labor, which tells me we basically hate all labor. And now we want them starving in the streets.
Well, I think, Jim, that we like cheap labor. I think as a universal American, thanks for the phone call, I think America does like cheap labor, and that's what we've seen when we talked about some of the immigration issues.
Going back to the days of slavery, I guess.
Yeah.
Don in Arvada. Good morning, Don. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Yeah, good morning. Listen to your show, enjoy the show every morning. But I wanted to ask Billy a question on his subject of taxation. So, and I always hear this, that they don't have a clear picture of when fairness ends in terms of tax policy. We all have to pay taxes. We all have to contribute, and I pay plenty myself. But I feel like, when is enough enough? If a man works hard, when should he be able to keep the rest? Is it 50 cents on the dollar? Is it 60 cents on the dollar? And they would say, well, if you make a lot, you need to pay more. But when does it end? When is it enough? Is 50 cents on the dollar enough? Because we're already at that point, Billy. For people that are making decent money, you add up all the taxes, the fees, the Obama surcharges, you lose deductions when you make more money. You add it all up. It's at 50% now for a lot of people. When is enough going to be enough?
here's the thing, and I appreciate the question, Don, is that here's where I would take the conversation. I don't think there is a universal when is enough. I don't think there is a universal answer to that, because I think everyone's economic situation is going to be different based on where you are in society. Now, where I'm going with the taxes is I don't think we are taxing enough out of the people that are at the top level, because based on our current tax structure, we have seen a siphoning of money out of the middle class into the upper class. And the upper class, they have overwhelmingly been the winners of this economy of the previous 20, maybe even 30 years that we could talk about. And if we go back to a time, and we talk about America, when the middle class had more ability to buy, start a family, houses, education, everything else, that was a very, very regressive tax structure on the rich. And what happened is the rich then did not have the ability to purchase up as many assets as they do now. Their money has to work. And so their money is competing for the assets that the middle class used to be able to buy. And that's why housing prices are going up in many areas. It does have to do with laws, but it also has to do with competition for basic assets. Their money needs to earn 5 to 12% a year, and they've got to spend it somewhere. And so that's what's happening, is when you give them the extra money, they're going to spend it that way. Here's the idea. If there were things like tax breaks given inside of a company for year-end bonuses for people making a certain amount of money, if there were tax breaks given for certain hires, if there were tax breaks given for raises, tax breaks given in other areas, you probably would see companies turning around and reinvesting into the company rather than investing into either stock or bonuses for the people at the top. Bed Bath & Beyond is my best example. Bed Bath & Beyond had about $11 billion is what they had spent on stock buybacks. They had a liability of $5 billion. But the people in charge did stock buybacks because it goosed their pay and how much money they took home and how much money was in their bank account, and left the $5 billion in liabilities sitting there. So when they finally depleted their resources, the company went bankrupt. Now, I would argue that a CEO of a company who spends $11 billion on stock buybacks instead of taking care of the liability is neglecting their fiduciary responsibility as a CEO, especially in a company that has stock. But that's what we have. And so that's the example that I have, is we have tilted the playing field that advantages those top earners. And I'm not talking about people that make $1 million a year. I'm not talking about people that make $2 million a year. I'm talking about those super earners. They're siphoning off money. They're siphoning off assets. And that's, for me, the problem. That's where I would go. I think you and I are probably paying too much. But part of the reason we're paying what we are is because the people at the top are getting such a great deal in the situation. That's my opinion.
Don? Response?
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. We have a very complicated tax code that makes it unfair for a lot of people, and we should simplify the tax code so that people can figure out ahead of time, make their plan for their life, and be able to predict what they're going to owe in taxes. But you'd look at the state of Colorado, and they say anyone that makes over $400,000 is making too much, and they want to tax them. And the comment's always the rich don't pay their fair share. And that's just not true, Billy. And you just confirm that by saying you're not talking about $1 million, $2 million. You're talking about the ultra high earners. So if we can simplify the tax code, but to me, it doesn't matter how much you make. If you know, hey, half of that's going to go in taxes or whatever percentage that is. But I think there's a point where you've got to stop. But you got to quit, as I agree with you, you got to quit giving tax breaks and making the code so complicated that nobody that makes a simple living can figure it out.
Yeah, Don, something that's weird. In Japan, the government does your taxes. They send you a postcard, at the end of the year. No, but what it is just
But
like
they
right
do
now.
it here anyways.
Well, I
They
know,
just
but
never tell you.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is the government already knows all of your income, your expenditures, everything else. They just do the taxes, and it's taken out of your paycheck. And at the end of the year, you get a postcard saying this is how much you paid in taxes this year. That's it. Just like our FICA taxes and everything else, it disappears in Japan. That might be an easier way. And I appreciate what you talked about the $400,000. People earning that. I agree with you. That I think is the biggest negative for people that want to reform the tax code. Is they focus on people that are making $400,000 a year, $1 million a year, $2 million a year. It is not that difficult in this day and age, if you own land, to amass $1 million in assets. But it doesn't mean you're making that kind of money. The idea of that, and that's why I think that where we've seen the growth is in that super, super, super rich. And the thing that people forget is there's a lot of money there. And siphoning off more of that money, I don't think there's a negative, only because, and this is a bad analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway because you listen to the show long enough, that I have yet to hear an NFL player come to contract negotiations going, I'm in the wrong tax bracket. I need less money next year. I don't need that multi-million-dollar guaranteed signing bonus. But all those players that are on their second or third salary know exactly, or contract, they know exactly how much money is going to be taken out based on taxes. They know that. And not a single one of them is asking to make less because of the taxes.
Don Arvada, appreciate the call. We'll continue.
Thanks,
Join
Don.
the conversation. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Bill, I got to take issue with at least one thing you said.
Oh, good. Yeah,
which was the idea of making money work.
Yeah.
The idea that sending that to the government and claiming that the money is finally getting to work. Oh, brother.
I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm sorry if that was the impression. The issue being what I was saying is that the people that are super rich need a return on their investment. They can't just let the money lie fallow. And that investment is what making assets more expensive for the rank and file middle class because of that competition of money. I understand, and I agree on the critique of giving the money in taxes to the government isn't the same based on the money working for you. I get
It's
it.
like the least efficient thing you could ever do with the money.
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. But what I'm looking at is the point that I was making is those super rich need a return on their money because they're not going to Scrooge McDuck it. They're not going to throw it into a giant vault so they can go swimming on the odd occasion that they feel like it. That money has to be earning a relative return. And in order to do that, it has to be invested in certain areas. And then it's competing for
the dollars to do.
But no, because then it's competing for assets against those at the middle class. That's the problem we're having right now. That's the issue.
All right. I disagree, but join the conversation. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's go to the phone line. Sam, Denver. Good morning, Sam.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, a couple comments on the taxes. I agree with Jeff. I think we definitely have a spending problem. I think more than a revenue problem. I think if you asked anybody if they had $1 million and they wanted that money to work for them, would they give it, and their sole goal was to get a return on investment, would they give it to the government or would they give it to like a Jeff Bezos or a, Elon Musk? And I think, that's an obvious answer. But I think Trump proved that when you cut corporate taxes and and I think the rich are already paying enough tax. They're at like 40%. I think that's good enough. But he showed when you cut corporate taxes, those corporations invest in new machinery, new equipment.
Excuse me, that's not right at all. That didn't happen at all last time, Sam. During
hold on, let me
Tax
finish
Cuts and
my
Jobs
point.
Act. Okay, go ahead. But during the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that's not what happened.
That's exactly what happened.
No.
And the proof is that the poverty rates were the lowest in history under Trump. So they benefited. The poor definitely benefited. They got a 20% tax cut and doubled their standard deduction. So they had more money in their pocket, lower inflation. Corporations were investing in, like I said,
the tax reduction on the poor did not it was not in the same thing as the here. Hang on, we're going to talk about this in a second here, Sam. That's not the same thing as the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did not spur reinvestment nor hiring. That's the problem in your example, Sam. But we'll talk about it after this.
We'll continue. Plus, we got Steve Reams coming up next hour. We're going to be debating those speed cameras. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver.